There are many things to be said about the presidential debate that just took place between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. However, the most important things that could be said and must be said are not being said, which is why in this video, we're going to fix that problem. And I'm going to offer an uncommon angle of viewing this presidential debate within the context of the point we are at right now in our history, in this particular American political moment. But before I get into all of that, hello everyone, I am Christian Watson. If you enjoy political and social commentary from a philosophical bent, I would encourage you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, even if you disagree with me. I think disagreement is the way we refine the mind and we overcome some of the limitations that we have and some of the problems that we have in this country. I believe that discussions and debates are going to be a vehicle for us, not just to overcome the political problems of the country, but to also overcome some of our personal epistemic limits and broaden our reach to understand the depths of the issues that currently impact our world. So thank you so much for being here. And now let us get on to the video. So there are a few angles that have been popularly cited and pushed in the wake of the atrocious, at least for Biden, presidential debate that happened between Biden and Trump. The first angle is asking the question, will Biden be replaced? Of course, the New York Times editorial board came out and actually encouraged this. There was a big conversation about this. The second angle is that Biden's obvious dementia is embarrassing to the country, and it has emboldened our enemies to connive and plan for America's downfall. The third angle, I'll give another angle here, is a question about what Trump meant by black jobs or whatever. And there are more angles, of course, but those are the main ones. And while I think some of these angles are interesting, although I don't think they are compelling, they ultimately miss the point. They miss the significance of what happened on that debate night, and they are a part and parcel of the culture of mass distraction that is force-fed to Americans, that robs them of deeper insight by fixing their focus on issues that are ultimately low-hanging fruit and ultimately, in the broader scheme of things, don't matter. And so we must challenge that. And we must look a little bit deeper. And we must go towards history to actually understand what the best angle here may be. So consider this, my friends. Biden is the face of the institutional political left. By virtue of being the president and being the head of the Democratic Party, he is thereby the face of the institutional political left. He inherits an intellectual tradition that stretches back 125 plus years of American history, that includes luminaries like Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, these guiding lights that really set forth the foundations of progressivism that has become so effective in our American life. Now, in the 1900s, my friends, the progressives had a very clear ideological agenda because the 1900s is when their origin point was. And its sophistication led them to hijack several American institutions, social institutions and political institutions, and completely and utterly turn our constitutional order and our moral order on its head and shape its character to reflect the goals of their ideological agenda as opposed to reflect its original intention as set forth in 1776 and the intention, of course, of the first principles of this country, which is it's very interesting because the progressives were arguing back then that in order to get forth their agenda, in order to achieve progress, law must be unshackled from the limitations of the Constitution. Law must be unshackled from the limitations of moral first principles. And society, rather than sort of abstract in their words moral rules, must be prioritized. This is why you saw, for example, during the progressive era, the dissolution of the separation of powers, because the separation of powers, according to Woodrow Wilson and other people, were seen as these procedural things that are just holding back progress. And there were several other things that happened that kind of went to this spirit of killing the Constitution in order to help people or progress. And of course, that was not progress, that was regress, because it took us ultimately back to a old world system that rejects the foundations of Americanism. But I digress. So when someone argues, and you hear this common argument, that the left has all of the institutions in the country, they are making a poor attempt at diagnosing a real problem, at diagnosing the full effects of progressivism on America's political and social landscape. So this movement that is so deathly effective, that has had luminaries like Woodrow Wilson, people who were incredibly smart, even if they were, I think, ultimately harmful to the country, that has effectively taken over most of the institutions in our country, that has effectively shaped the legal landscape, especially over the past 60 or 70 years. This movement that is founded on notions of Hegelianism, which is a philosophy that's also not about America, or scientism, which is this idea you can measure the life of Americans and you can direct lives as Americans from on high by using charts and measurements as opposed to going towards deeper things. And communitarianism, the idea that the individual does not matter and the Constitution does not matter in light of the communities that exist in society. All of these different things were baked into our history, baked into our country by this movement. And yet, this movement in 2024 only has Joe Biden, a demented old man, to offer? Do you guys understand how significant this is? In fact, the significance of this cannot be overstated. Progressivism has brought us things like public schooling, which is not education, by the way, because schooling and education are different. Education refines the mind and the spirit with things that are necessary for the growth of the man. Schooling drills a doctrine into the head of the man and seeks to get him to conform to some agenda that doctrine is tied to. It pushed forth this notion of abortion rights, which is a part of the broader idea of positive rights, which are a perversion of the traditional understanding of rights, which say that rights are innate to you. This positive rights stuff says that rights come from the government, and they are instead privileges that can be broadened by way of law. Progressivism brought us that perverse notion. Progressivism also brought us the notion of socialized medicine and healthcare. Progressivism has done so many things to shape the American understanding. It has introduced this new era of managerialism and expert class management of American life by way of justifying it on the basis of protecting the environment or whatever. It has drastically shaped every level of American life. And yet, again, this highly effective movement only has Joe Biden to offer in 2024. This highly effective movement that has dominated and shaped American perceptions for hundreds of years. It has received pushback, surely, but is still ingrained in how we think of so many different things. Think about how we think of taxation. The term pay your fair share is a clarion call that so many different people, even average folk who are not progressive, seem to resonate with, when in all reality, the idea of paying a fair share is a highly subjective notion that essentially justifies theft in the name of the common good. In other words, the individual is a sacrificial lamb to the collective. That idea has been enmeshed into the American mind. Social Security, for example, people think that Social Security is an inherent benefit that they are meant to get, even though Social Security is very simply a government Ponzi scheme that involves taking money from people, appropriating it for whatever they want, and then saying, you earned this. No, you robbed your neighbor to get this. This is not Americanism. All these things, progressive relics, that shape the American mind. And yet, all they have to offer in 2024 is Joe Biden. I can't stress this enough. What an indictment of institutional progressivism that this is what they have to offer. Now, let's consider this question. What is the significance that the only thing they have to offer, after shaping our lives for hundreds of years, after being highly effective, what is the significance that Joe Biden is what they have to offer? Well, there are a few things here, my friends. Number one, the fact is very simple. Institutional progressivism is dying. It is dying because it has lost its thought leaders. It has lost its emphasis on philosophy, and it has devolved into an engine for political motives and political interests solely. Because in the days of Wilson and Roosevelt and FDR, there was a kind of, whether I agree with it or not, I don't agree with it, but there was a kind of holistic worldview that was central to the progressive ethos. But today, that worldview is simply skin-suited and worn by folks like Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Joe Biden and even Barack Obama, in all honesty. He wasn't a progressive in any sense of the word, to gain favor with the grassroots of the Democratic Party that are progressive But in all reality, that skin suit is not genuine, which is why people, and many people on the left, don't like Hillary Clinton, not because she's a conservative, but because she is not really a progressive, so on and so forth. So it's obvious that progressivism has turned from an ethos to a political instrument, which has degraded the quality of its content, and therefore the quality of its ability to hold on to what it gained in the first place. That is significant. That is significant. Number two, it shows that the norms of power are separate from the norms and goals of the grassroots. Now, many of you may know this, but it becomes especially important to recognize this when you see how such a mighty institution can fall by putting this person up on a pedestal where everything else doesn't matter. And it also shows that political considerations have nothing to do with the considerations of moral consistency. You see what I'm saying? Many people will say that we have to win elections, therefore forget X or Y, Z issues. But the truth is this: you don't win elections truly by betraying your values. You get a short-term victory by doing that, but you set yourself up for a long-term defeat because you don't have a foundation to operate on when you get into the office that you supposedly won. So in all reality, by blowing up your own foundations, you don't have much ground to walk on. So you don't really win anything. You lose everything in the short run, but you get a short-term high. In essence, you are a political drug addict who thinks that electoral strategy and political strategy dominate the whole of the world and everything else does not matter. So why am I talking about this? What about the debate? What about talking about golf or whatever? Why am I talking about this stuff? Very simple. You're not going to hear any other influencer or pundit talk about this take. You need to ask yourself why. If we as Americans truly wish to reclaim our heritage from the ravages of leftism, we must capitalize upon the failure of institutional progressivism and move forward with a positive, alternative vision for the future. But this is never going to happen if you're so hung up on who plays golf better, Trump or Biden, on what stage of dementia Biden is at, what Joe Biden is doing, what the DNC is doing, what the New York Times is saying, who's going to replace who. If you're focused on these low-hanging fruit, you're going to miss the prize that is before us as Americans, as conservatives, as those who love our country, as those who love our heritage, as those who love the ethos of our Constitution. The prize that is before us is a golden opportunity to take the horns of this beast that has been ravaging our country and redirect them towards a positive vision for the future. But if you're distracted, you will miss this opportunity. So I must say this: we must stop being distracted. We must focus on what matters. And we must restore constitutionalism as our guiding ethos and revitalize our institutions with that. The chevron being overturned is a simple step in this direction. That was a great thing. But there's more that we can do in our individual capacities, and we can start by talking about the fact that the institutional left is so weak. They are so feeble. Not only is DEI failing, not only are many people waking up to the divisions that has been foisted upon them by leftism, not only is sort of anti-racism failing, not only are all these different things failing, not only are people realizing that the progressive ethos around crime, which focuses instead on forgiving people that do violent crimes as opposed to punishing them, is failing, but the very leadership of these institutions that push this stuff is also failing. That is significant. Let us take this opportunity and let us blaze forth a path of Americanism, constitutionalism, to get us out of the hellscape we currently find ourselves in. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can. I love you so much. Study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.